Hello everyone and welcome to our thought for the week. In this little term, I want to concentrate in our collective worship, our thought for the week on our films, on some stories that Jesus told. We sometimes call those stories parables. Now, Jesus wasn't the only person who told stories in the form of parables. Lots of people have done that. You could do it too. A parable is a story that has an extra layer of meaning. So, for example, I might make up a story about a field which is really messy and full of rubbish and not looked after well, and a class full of children who look after the field and clean it up and care for it and plant lovely things in it and turn it into a wonderful garden. That story would become a parable if we decided that it had a bigger meaning. For example, that everyone should look after the land around them, that we should all look after the whole planet. Jesus told lots of stories like that, and they often helped us to think about the sort of people we should be, or the way that God sees us and the example that God sets for the sort of people that we should be. One story that I've been thinking about a lot just recently is a very short one, and in that short story, someone is being critical of someone else. I wonder if you know what that word critical means. It means they're saying something that suggests someone else is doing something wrong or needs to change. Now, sometimes we need people to be critical of us, and when it's done the right way, it can be really helpful. If I'm trying to learn how to do a new thing and I'm getting it wrong, it really helps me when someone else who can do it better is critical, because they can help me to do it better. So, for example, when I was learning how to play the piano, my piano teacher needed to be critical. She needed to tell me what I was doing wrong and help me to do it better so that I could become a better piano player. It was very important that my piano teacher was kind. She didn't say to me, "Oh, for goodness sake, you're being silly," or, "Oh dear, you're a terrible piano player." She didn't say that. She said, let's look at how you're using your hands. Let's try some exercises to try that again. Can you play that a little bit slower or faster? And so she helped me. Being critical isn't necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes we can use critical ways of thinking in bad ways, especially when we become judgmental, when we try to tell other people what to do or think and suggest that they're getting something wrong. Jesus said there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. When my piano teacher told me how to play the piano better, well, she's a much better piano player than I was. And she's still a much better piano player than I am now. And so she knows how to make me a better piano player. But what if I'd tried to tell her how to play the piano better? That would have been silly, wouldn't it? She's very good at playing the piano, and I'm not. So I can't tell her how to play the piano better. That would be a wrong thing to do because I don't know enough about it. Jesus, in his story, talked about someone who spotted something wrong with someone else. The thing he spotted that was wrong with someone else was that he'd got something in his eye. A speck, perhaps he'd got an eyelash in his eye. And the person who could see that speck in his eye was saying, "You've got a speck in your eye. Let me get it out for you. I'll help you. I'll get the speck out of your eye." But here was the problem. The person who was saying, "You've got a speck in your eye. Let me get it out for you," had something in his eye too. And it wasn't just a speck, it was a plank, a great big piece of wood. Now, I'm holding a plank here, and I've got to sit right back from the camera for you to see it. And this is only a little plank. I don't think I could get this in my eye, could you? And so Jesus was making a joke that you might have a plank in your eye. So how could you possibly see to take a speck out of somebody else's eye? And in that funny story, Jesus helped us to see that we have to make sure that we're being fair, and that when we criticise someone else, that we're not criticising someone wrongly, and that we're able to help them. Let me give you another example. I really like watching rugby. Do you like watching sport? Some of you will say yes, some of you will say no. Perhaps you like rugby, like me, or football, or tennis, or swimming, or, well, there's loads of sports, aren't there? And when I watch rugby, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm watching the game, and can you see, I support Northampton Saints. It's their team ball. So I want the Saints to win, and I'm watching them. Now, if I started to look at the rugby and to criticise the rugby players, and to say, you're not running fast enough, or why do you keep dropping the ball, or couldn't you have got that try, tackle him. Well, people do that sort of thing when they're watching sport, don't they? But if I did it, if I were to go up to a rugby player and tell them how to play, even worse, if I were to go up to a rugby player and tell them what they did wrong, that would be like having a plank in my eye. Because I've never actually played rugby in my life. I can't play rugby. When I was at school, girls weren't allowed to learn to play rugby. We had to learn how to play netball and hockey. But I can't play rugby. All I know how to do is to watch it and stand at the sides and support it. So I mustn't criticise a rugby player, even when the rugby player does drop the ball. Because if you threw me a wet ball in the middle of a rugby game, I don't suppose I'd even drop the ball, because I wouldn't have caught it in the first place. I wouldn't be any good at rugby. It would be like having a plank in my eye and trying to take a speck out of someone else's. Not good at all. For all of us, there are sometimes times when we're the people who are really good at something, like my piano teacher when she talks to me, or if I decided to learn rugby, like the rugby coach teaching me. No rugby coach would let me near a field. When we think about ourselves, we need to think about what we're good at and what we can really help people with. But we also need to make sure that we are being fair and just, and that we don't talk like people who have a plank in our eye, or, if you like me if I criticised a rugby player. But instead, we're listening to those who know more than us and helping those who know less, that we're being fair and not judgmental. All that behind one funny story about a person with a plank in his eye trying to help someone else with a speck. I'm going to say a prayer now, and if you agree with my prayer, then say Amen at the end. Let's be quiet for a moment. Dear God, thank you for the stories that Jesus told us that help us. Whether we follow Jesus or we don't, his stories can help us to be better people. As we think about the story of the man with the plank and the man with the speck, please help us to not be judgmental, but always be helpful, to listen to those who are qualified to help us, especially to our teachers, and to try to be better people, to take the planks out of our eyes, like Jesus told us to, before we try to help people with specks in theirs. Amen. So have a lovely week, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.